to the Acid Trash Jamboree, the home of offbeat and weird music and films. Today I thought I'd take a look at a couple of very cool compilations issued by the mega-prolific Numero Group label within the past decade. Now, these came out as part of their Wayfaring, or in this case, Warfaring Strangers series. So without further ado, let's take a look at them. Okay, so Darkscorch Canticles was put out back in 2014, and yeah, take a quick glance at the track list and you'd be forgiven for thinking that this was all part of some elaborate unknown Deutschland Pyramids Records styled hoax. Yeah, 16 beyond obscure hard rock combos with awesomely evocative names like Space Rock, Triton Warrior and Stone Axe, and mouth-watering song titles brimming with morbid and occultist references. Gotta be a wind-up, right? Well, actually no. As with many of the artists you see scattered about on similar compendiums of vintage garage and psychedelic music, the vast majority of these groups were your classic one single and done types with only a small handful ever going on to make an album. One of which, Wizard from Tampa, Florida, whose full length is entitled The Original Wizard, was the only band that I'd ever heard of before I got this CD. Also take into account the fact that most of these bands had never been comped before, and yeah, that explains their utter obscurity. But is the music any good, I hear you scream, and the answer is yes, mostly. Granted, you could play quite an intensive round of spot the influence across the course of these tunes. Yeah, all the expected reference points crop up, Sunshine of Your Love type chromatic riffage, early Sabbath power chord chugging, and boneheaded blue cheerisms are rife, all topped off with dark shadings of the green Manalishi and a healthy dose of heavy Jimi Hendrix experience funk. That said, some of the groups do touch on other prominent stylings of the time. Air's opener, 12 O'Clock Sataniel from 1972, is simultaneously the most melodic and the most dissonant thing here. Yeah, obviously indebted to classic West Coast psychedelia, as well as the early progressive music of Procol Harum and King Crimson. Its stately, organ-drenched verses are broken up by strange, carnival-esque detours and the kind of diabolical tritone devilry that Crimson themselves were starting to exploit around about the same time. Speaking of West Coast stuff, the aforementioned Wizards tune, Seance, is almost like a fuzzed-up remake of the Byrds' Renaissance Fair, albeit with the kind of sinister lyricism and detuned apocalyptic power ending that McGuinn & Co. wouldn't have dreamed of inflicting on their audience. Then there's Stoned Mace's B-side, Tasmania, which most definitely shares some musical DNA with Jefferson Airplane's classic White Rabbit. Its moody guitar lines writhing and swirling like a quiver of entranced cobras. Other highlights include Arrogance's Black Death, which sounds like a grunge song born 20 years prematurely. Hellstorm's flanged out Cry for the Newborn, which could be Voodoo Child, as reinterpreted by avant-funk outsider legend Wicked Witch, and Stone Axe's Sabbath-worshipping Slave of Fear, which seems to condense the entire Paranoid LP into a neat 5-minute package. Elsewhere, Triton Warriors Sealed in a Grave is a title that the Ian Gillan-approved Doom and Gloom lords Jerusalem would have killed for, though musically it's nowhere near as dark as you'd expect, instead bringing to mind the chipper melodic stylings of bands like Stray, perhaps, whilst Dark Star's gloomy 1977 fuzzer Spectre pulses with punky energy and wouldn't have disgraced a contemporaneous George Brigman LP. So yeah, to reiterate, this is that most rare of things, a compilation of vintage rock music that's actually mostly exclusive to this release. Needless to say, if you're on a quest to take in as much hard rock, proto-metal and heavy psych as your poor, tortured ears and brains will allow, then this comes highly recommended. Come to think of it, as does this. 2017's Acid Nightmares, which is another solid scoop of hard-rocking scuzz, though unlike Darkscorch Canticles, which focus exclusively on American and Canadian bands, this one features a handful of British and European acts too, such as the German band Gift, who were signed to labels like Telefunken and Nova, plus the Portuguese outfit Jarhanga, who opened the show with their near-title song Acid Nightmare, a hyperactive and rather astonishing creation which moves through sections of funky, fleet-fingered power riffing, a dark, organ-dominated progscape, and galloping heavy metal, all topped off with howling, Halford-esque vocal fry from main man Carlos Cavallero. Now, whilst Darkscorch honed in on songs with fantastical and occult lyrical themes, the songs presented here deal with various forms of substance abuse. Yeah, titles like Pink Pills, Hooked, and Hypodermic Needle pretty much speak for themselves. Suitably enough, there's more than a trace of Iggy and the Stooges in several of these cuts, most notably on fellow Michigan mob TNS's raucous Time's Up, which is a dead ringer for some long-forgotten raw power outtake. Oh, but wait, apparently this came out a year before that feral classic. Elsewhere, Goliath's Dead Drunk Screaming cruises by on a fat-arsed mountain-style groove, with a chorus straight out of the Sir Lord Baltimore songbook, whilst the aforementioned Hooked, the work of the wonderfully monikered Bulbous Creation, is a sludgy, cold turkey lament filtered through both Buffalo Springfield's For What It's Worth and Neil Young's Down by the River. Sadly, it would seem that not even a single note of Bulbous Creation's music saw the light of day during the group's lifespan, though the archival LP, You Won't Remember Dying, did emerge on Rockadelic Records in 1994, which looks like it's worth a listen. Towards the back end of the disc, we get pearls like Speed Freak by The Ritual and Gollum's epic Prayer of Despair, which blatantly rip off White Room and Dazed and Confused respectively for their intros, before becoming well-defined and engaging tunes in their own right. The former is a thoroughly paranoid garage stomper, in the vein of The Music Machine at their most dramatic, whilst the latter sports frenzied Yardbirds-style rave-ups and pained vocals in amidst a weirdly catchy, ever-circling psychedelic chord progression. The Purple Sun and the Shy Guys keep things firmly in the garage psych zone with their numbers, before the thoroughly obscure combo Sun Cycle wrap things up with a stinging instrumental jam entitled Acid Raga. Now, this does precisely what it says on the tin, whipping up a ritualistic modal storm that'd make peak-era country Joe and the Fish green with envy. On the original 7-inch, Acid Raga was split into two, though here Numero Group have segued the parts to form a rather handy 5-minute eargasm. Now, as enjoyable as all these tracks are on an individual basis, due to the way the comp is sequenced, when listened to as a whole, it becomes apparent that most of the more distinctive material is gathered at the end, whilst the first half has a tendency to mush together into a hairy clump of pentatonic bluster if you're not paying full attention. So yeah, very much a comp of two halves in that respect, but as I say, Acid Nightmares is still a very worthy addition to your groaning shelves if you're a freak for this type of stuff. So that's it for another video. I hope it's been interesting. If you're up for more episodes along the same lines, or if you just like mind-expanding music and cinema in general, then feel free to take a look around the channel and hit subscribe to be kept up to date on all future developments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon on the Acid Trash Jamboree.